And the Oscar goes to... The Shape of Water.
Movies have been probably my number one passion since I was a child. I grew up watching them in theaters, on TV, on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray. You name a way to watch movies and I did. I've gone so far as to write my own screenplays and draw my own storyboards. It really can't be understated how much I absolutely adore the medium. It's not even just the quote-unquote good movies. I even love some incredibly bad movies. Thanks killing anyone? That said, I really developed a taste for what some people would describe as Oscar bait in my time working at a local movie theater during high school. I remember correctly naming The Departed Best Picture after watching it in late 2006. I remember correctly naming No Country for Old Men the Best Picture of 2007. I mean, I just really developed a knack for watching and understanding what made the best movies the best. The Oscars, seeing as how I love movies as much as I do, quickly became one of my favorite events, something akin to the Super Bowl. Since 2007, I've watched every event with an eagerness that's hard to describe. However, in more recent years, my interest has started to wane. Not for any specific reason, mostly the shows have become overly long and just aren't as entertaining as they used to be, but it's more of a sense that the Academy just doesn't get it anymore. I don't really know if they've gotten it in a while. The newest evidence for this is in the announcement of a couple of months ago that the Academy would be introducing a new category known as the Achievement in Popular Film. Now, I think this is the wrong move for a fair number of reasons that I'll get to in just a moment, but I'd like to try to understand why. The Oscars have been maligned for a very long time for not nominating, let alone picking more popular movies as Best Picture. This can be seen all the way back to the 1978 Oscars when Annie Hall beat out Star Wars for Best Picture. This may not be the first case, but it certainly is one of the most prominent cases. A more recent case is that of The Dark Knight, which actually prompted the Academy to make a change to the number of films nominated for Best Picture. On top of this, the TV ratings for the Oscars have declined year over year since the 2014 Oscars. It would be safe to say that the Academy is looking for a way to get a ratings boost considering that the almost all-time low ratings of last year's telecast. I presume that the mixture of the ever-present complaint that the Oscars never shine a light on quality popular film and the recent lack of success in the ratings has led them to believe this strategy will work in bringing viewers back. I do not believe that to be the case. Firstly, I hate the name. I know this is a dumb thing to complain about, but it really does say something about the movies you intend to nominate and the category itself. The other categories have meaning. Achievement in film editing, well, that means something. It's tangible. It has an exact definition. Achievement in popular film has such a nebulous meaning. It has almost literal no definition. I know that in order for this category to exist and have meaning, there must be qualifiers in place, but that just raises even more questions. Like, if it's based on a democratic people's vote, then why is it even at the Oscars? And if it's based on the box office, well, what happens to movies like Titanic and the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Both of those won and engrossed insane amounts of monies. Are those movies not worthy of Best Picture nods anymore? Now, I know this point may rub some people the wrong way, but the Oscars are supposed to mean something. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that the Academies can't honor highly grossing fare. In fact, later in the video, I'm going to make the case that they should. It's just that the category is almost literally saying, here's where we give an honorary award to blockbusters. Why is that necessary? There are already Teen Choice Awards, MTV Movie Awards, and others that honor these movies. The Oscars is more prestigious than those, and for good reason. The Academy has no business in doing this if they intend to consider themselves the ultimate award of filmmaking. And I guess that brings me to the real crux of my argument, and that's that there is not only a fundamental misunderstanding within the Academy on what blockbusters are, and there is a precedent of high-grossing movies not only being nominated, but also winning Best Picture. First, I want to take any sort of argument out of the way. It is without a single doubt that blockbusters are art. There are always arguments to be had over whether or not they deserve to be held in the pantheon of high art, and personally, I don't get that. Like all other forms of art, movies are interpretive. They can mean totally and completely different things to different people. Someone could watch The Shining and see a parable for the plight of Native Americans at the hands of European settlers, and someone else could see it in a mission that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing. At the exact same time, someone could watch Transformers and see it as an allegorical tale of technology gone wrong, while someone else could see, just giant robots fighting. I mean it when I say that all art is interpretive. And so to say that blockbusters can't be art is really a dubious statement. The Academy needs to understand this. Jaws was nominated for Best Picture and is also considered the very first blockbuster. The reason it was nominated isn't because it sold so many tickets. The reason it was nominated is because it was an exceptionally well-made movie that also told a really wonderful story of a man conquering his fears in the face of an adversary unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The reason that the Avengers Infinity War is an exceptional piece of cinematic history isn't just because it tells a comic book story or that it sold a ton of tickets. It is truly great because of its take on humanity's self-indulgent nature and their failures as a species to create a sustainable future for themselves. I mean, of course there is the whole raucous action scenes and big bad aliens, but the movie is so much more than just the surface elements. It is about love, loss, failure, and so many other things. The idea that blockbusters aren't also commentaries on life because they aren't utterly realistic and offer over-the-top set pieces is nonsense. Michael B. Jordan's performance as Killmonger in Black Panther is one of the best performances I've seen in 2018, and just because it happened in a blockbuster takes literally nothing away from the performance. Blockbusters are just as worthy of praise as the quote-unquote Oscar bait, in my opinion. To that point, it also annoys me entirely that the Academy doesn't take into account the people who view these movies or the people who work on them. It is the highest order of condescension to say that because you watch high-grossing movies that you are a simpleton. It is just as grossly offensive to say that your work on a big budget movie that makes a lot of money means that you aren't as skilled as that of people making award movies. Is Wally Feister's work on the Dark Knight trilogy any less amazing because it's a comic book series? Is Guillermo del Toro's direction on Crimson Peak any less effective simply because it's a genre picture? Did the producers not do a good enough job in overseeing the excellent group of creators that worked on Heat? It just doesn't make sense. This brings me to my secondary point of my main argument. The Academy actually has a history of giving big awards to films that were not only superbly made, but also raked in tons of cash at the box office. While it hasn't been consistent over the years, it is worth mentioning because it shows the Academy doesn't always have its head up its own ass. On top of this, you only have to go back to the early 2000s to see this holding true. Let's go ahead and look at the last couple of years as a baseline for comparison. The average wide releases for 2017 grossed a little over $66 million. Of the 9 films nominated for Best Picture for that year, only 2 of those films grossed over that before being nominated. 2016's average gross was about $67 million, and of the 9 films nominated, 3 grossed more pre-nomination. 2015's average gross? $70 million. Again, only 3 of the Best Picture nominees grossed more than that pre-nomination. It should also be noted that with each of the 3 indicated years, only 3 of the nominated films were blockbusters: The Martian, Mad Max Fury Road, and Dunkirk. For the sake of argument, I'm going by the common definition of blockbuster that means a high-budget movie that makes a healthy profit, and therefore movies like Get Out don't really fit that definition. Now let's take a look at the Best Picture nominees from a little further back. Once again, I'll take a 3-year span, this time from 2000 to 2002. In 2002, the average gross was about $57.5 million, and 3 of the 5 nominees grossed more than that average pre-nomination. 2001 movies averaged a gross of $56 million, and of the films nominated for Best Picture, again 3 of the 5 surpassed that total before being nominated. Finally, the year 2000. The average box office gross was $49 million, and 4 of the 5 films nominated grossed over the threshold before being nominated. It may seem unfair to categorize the films in this manner. After all, 3 out of the 5 isn't saying much when there were only 5 nominees for Best Picture in those given years, but it's worth noting that in the given years, 5 of the nominated films were verifiable blockbusters. I think there's probably a little bit of criticism about what I've just presented, and I think I should address it. First, the reason that I decided to take pre-nomination box office as the criteria I based my findings on is because a significant portion of movies nominated for the Oscars get a re-release in theaters, adding to their totals. I think the pre-nomination better gauges audience interaction. Another point of contention that I think some people might take with the pre-nomination totals is that a pretty sizable portion of the Best Picture nominees debut in the final month of the year. While this is an argument I am amenable to, I also don't think it is fair to count out movies that released earlier in the year. It is the fault of the studios that release these films that they don't realize they're quality films earlier in the year. So with that out of the way, some of you out there may be saying, so what? The Oscars aren't supposed to recognize profits, they're meant to honor quality. I agree, they are meant to showcase the best that cinema has to offer. What I disagree with is the premise that profitable movies can't also be an example of excellence in art. That is why I think that this new category is such an immense failure by the Academy. Not only have they failed to realize that they have a history of honoring popular cinema in their already established category of Best Picture, but the Academy has also failed to remember that all films are works of art. Just because a movie doesn't have a current social meaning doesn't mean that it isn't speaking to the human condition. Some of my favorite movies of all time aren't Best Picture nominees, but they are stunning examples of the power of film. Jurassic Park, 28 Days Later, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and Spider-Man Homecoming may not have a lot in common, but they are all illustrations of the power that movies wield as a storytelling medium. What all of those films have in common is a look at mankind. Jurassic Park may be a look at how genetic engineering could bring back dinosaurs, but it is also a look at how hubris can bring about the destruction of man. 28 Days Later is surely about super diseases destroying the world, but it is also a commentary on how emotions can sometimes dictate even more horrifying reactions than the world around you. Scott Pilgrim is definitely a love story against a video game backdrop. It is also a story about how self-love is the key to defeating your demons and not someone else. What about Spider-Man Homecoming? Well, it is most certainly a comic book movie, but it is also about learning to accept who you are and your place in the world. The point of all of this is to say that sure, La La Land and Zero Dark 30 and Gravity are able to artfully show themes. That is undeniable. It is also undeniable to me that blockbusters are just as capable of showcasing these themes in interesting ways. To me, the category of Best Picture has always meant the best film of the year. It is the one that grips you within its universe and doesn't let go. It's supposed to enrapture with its visuals and its story and its editing. It's supposed to engross you with sounds and entice your eyes with its camera work. And it doesn't have to be pretentious. It can be a fun movie. It can be a blockbuster. That's why the idea behind this new category is wrong. Movies are built to express themes, and audiences around the world can gain this from even the most money-making machines that are blockbusters. The Academy would do well to learn this before both their audience and their relevance dissipates for good. Thanks everyone for watching this video. Please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so then you're notified on all of the content released on the Culture Pop channel. Also, don't forget to share this channel with your friends so that then they can also enjoy all the content that Culture Pop has to offer.